cultural background is some Russian and some Moroccan Jewish. I don't know of any musicians in my family, and I feel like for me, as I mentioned with my first drum, it just magnetically pulled me, and it's changed my life. I mean, drumming has changed my life, deepening into this culture. When you study rhythms from a certain place, you learn about the culture of that place and you learn about the language of that place. And I feel like it's really educated me about different places, Middle East and North Africa. I would like to say I've passed that on. I have a daughter who grew up being around drum classes in my house every week for 10 or 15 years, and she would sometimes come out and play. She now plays with us in Sister Boom, and she learned a lot from that. But also she got to grow up in a synagogue with all this drumming being played. When I grew up, that was not around. And I play at a lot of different ceremonies at my synagogue, and there's generations. And I have grandparents come up to me, and I always worry, oh my God, what are they thinking? And they'll say, I've never heard drumming before, and I love it. And my response is, I feel like there used to be drumming way back in Jewish music. I mean, people talk about Miriam and her timbrels, like leading, the Jews out of Egypt. That's what they were playing, was all these different instruments that are created in that part of the world. And I feel like it's added life, and it's so much more engaging. And I do work at the synagogue with young people, and I teach them drumming, and I teach them some body percussion with some of the songs and the prayers, and they're engaged. And so I feel like it's shifted, and I do feel like it's bringing something back that used to be like maybe hundreds and hundreds of years ago. In the last century or two, I don't think there's been drumming with Jewish music. I love it, and I feel like it drops me into a deep spiritual place. And I guess that's the other thing I'd say about drumming in general. No matter what the setting, whether I'm in a park, whether I'm at home, whether I'm in a synagogue or a mosque or a church, it's spiritual. It is so primal. There's something about feeling the rhythm and hearing the rhythm that touches people at such a deeper level. And at our big New Year's High Holidays celebration at Kehila, I drum, and we have 1,300 people. And people have said it's the thing that like holds it. They call me the heartbeat of the service, which I love, because I feel like that is my place to just channel through the rhythm, the groundedness, and also helping people soar on the music. And so for me, I feel like I found my place in what I'm doing, and I also know it affects a lot of people. I also started a group called Ketzev Kehila, and it's called The Beats of Kehila, and I have teenagers through 70-year-olds, and they take classes with me called Drumming is Prayer, and then they're able to drum at some of the services, and it's really a meditative way to drum, because we're holding space for people to come in and be in that spiritual place and kind of feel safe and feel present. And the interesting thing there is I have more women than men. Sometimes as a drummer, I mean, I've been teaching for years and I've always had mixed classes. A lot of times I feel like guys want to go study with guys, and for women, it's really safe and comfortable to study with women. The issues for men and women are really different. And my observations are like, men can get really loud and take up a lot of space, and women will pull in and get really small. So one of the things that I really do is give women permission to like get big with your drumming. Don't be afraid to hit the drum and, make sound, because I feel like in our culture, women are taught to really pull in. And I can remember this when my daughter was growing up, I would go into her classes and bring instruments. And some of the girls who were the quietest, I would give the loudest instruments, like give them the bells, give them the tambourines, so that they could express themselves in that way and kind of feel what it's like to break through and be liberated from always having to be small and pulled in. I do believe if all the world leaders got together and before whatever at their big conferences they have spent 30 minutes drumming, it would completely change the playing field. And I don't think they'd be so quick to necessarily go to war or fight each other because they just spent 30 minutes in the same rhythm. I am grateful to be able to be a woman drummer, and sometimes it is hard to feel like you're knocking at the door, and men are just there kind of wanting the gigs and just wanting to keep it a guy thing. And thankfully, I live in the Bay Area where there is a little bit more like understanding and consciousness about it, but not fully. And I was mentioning, I'm not remembering the name of the movie now. There was a movie out a couple years ago about a djembe drummer, and so many people came up to me, did you see that movie? But it was 2014, a circle of drummers in Central Park, all men. And I kind of feel like, really? Like, haven't we come like further than this? But we're invisible sometimes. Women drummers are invisible. And so there's places, like in the band I'm in, the two percussionists are women. Yes. Which I love. Singer's a woman, and we have an oud player and who's a guy. But there's something that's really sweet about it because it's so radical and so different from what we're used to seeing. And I'm just somebody who's into breaking down barriers, so I don't shy away from it. But at times it's hard. You're kind of almost dismissed. Like, yeah, but you're a woman, you don't really know how to play. And I'm grateful for places like Born to Drum, Women Drummers International, because they're highlighting women. And at the camp, it is women and girls only. And I've had conversations with people about it because they're, why? And I say, because women need a safe place to go where we're in charge and everybody feels safe to play and not in that competitive spirit. And I think it's really important for women to be empowered to hold the drum and get the knowledge. All the women in the drumming community that I know of, no matter what country they're from or what cultural style they're from, hit into barriers where people said, I'm not going to teach you, you can't really drum, and I'm going to dismiss you. And it's hard, because they're master drummers, incredible drummers. And, I've had that experience as well, where I've played with people here, and, it's almost like they want to enjoy it, but they can't quite give you a nod. And I've had male drummers be picked for certain gigs over me, and it doesn't feel good. But I just feel like it's part of what I'm doing, and go where the good energy is and keep trying to educate people. So there is a piece about drumming where if you study a certain drumming style, you need to learn about that culture. And I know sometimes people are uncomfortable about, am I appropriating? Is this okay? And what I feel, and I feel like my generation and this group of drummers I'm part of, it's all about the respect piece. Even though I play West African rhythms, I would never call myself a West African drummer because I'm not. Or if I learn Afro-Cuban rhythms and I teach them, I wouldn't call myself an Afro-Cuban drummer because I'm not. I think it's all about the respect piece. And I think coming in knowing that you are learning about another culture, to just know that and hold the space of that, to know I'm honored to be learning about this other culture and it's not my culture. And so just always keeping that in mind is really important. And, I'm using these instruments. Well, I'm not Egyptian and I'm not Syrian, where that's from, but I know the rhythms of that region. and I'm just respectful of knowing where it came from, even though my Jewish roots, they do have some of that instrument. But I encourage anyone who wants to learn. I have plenty of students who aren't Jewish, who aren't Middle Eastern, but they're really drawn to this style of drumming, and I think it's great. Go for it. Do it, and just keep in mind that piece of respect that you're learning about this culture. It's not only the rhythms, but it's a whole cultural piece. And to me, that is the key. And I think it's important no matter which culture. I feel like, we have like where we're from in terms of blood, but I feel like a lot of us feel spiritual home in different places than where our ancestry might be from, like blood ancestry, spiritual ancestry. And certain rhythms will just feel so familiar. Sometimes when I play West African music, I feel like, yes. But I know this time around, that's not where I'm from. But there's something really potent about, like, don't hold yourself back and don't not do it, but always just keep those things in mind to know, hey, I'm a visitor and a guest in this culture, but I'm welcome if I have that respect of that. And I think that the other thing I say, since we're on this cultural piece, what I try to teach my students is, if you see drums laid out there, don't just go play them. That it's really important to ask, hey, can I touch your drum? There are certain cultures where only the person whose drum it is touches that drum. It's like a spiritual object, a power object. And it's really important to kind of know that you ask somebody, hey, is it okay if I touch your drum, if I play? Even with my students. I had a student come back from Turkey recently with a drum, and she wanted me to check it out, and is it okay if I play it? Because it's her speaking voice. That's kind of how I think about it. So I feel like that's an important piece to learn for drums, and it respects the culture as well as the person. So one of my goals of teaching is teaching the next generation. And I'm happy to teach boys and girls together. And the thing is, if they learn together, then it's a really different situation than my generation, where boys often got taught and girls were kept out. And then we feel like, okay, now we need like female only time. I feel like if you're kids and you're learning together, it is like this equanimity that you start with. And I just feel like it's so important for kids to be able to be on the drum. I've seen it therapeutically. I'll have some of the most antsy 10, 11-year-old boys who can barely sit still in class, and I put them on the drum, and after 15 minutes of that, they are the most focused, like centered kids, and their teachers have been blown away about how that works and the therapeutic uses of drumming, which could be a whole other interview, but I feel like that has a real place. And with kids, I think it's so important. We have so much ADD, ADHD in our culture because of all the screens we're on. I feel like if kids had 30 minutes of drumming, like every day, every other day, it would get them in their bodies, get the energy out, and get them really focused. So I do sometimes get brought into schools, and I play with kids in that way and get them really focused, and also teach them rhythm in the body. We walk around with these bodies all the time. So one of my loves is also body percussion, and we all walk around with the body. And so I feel like that's super important, not for them to go on and be musicians, but for them to find that place in themselves that's musical, that's creative, that's centered, that's grounded. And I feel like the magic of drumming is that it has all of that. And of course, there's all these scientific studies about how drumming, what it does to the brain and the way it helps memory, all those kind of things I fully believe in. And I think it's important to keep passing it on and passing it to next generation. So I'm definitely interested in teaching kids. And as far as the movement, I don't know. I think those of us that are making our living as drummers and women drummers, we just need to keep doing what we're doing. Going out in the world, traveling across the country, around the world, being women drummers and continually educating people like, oh, you can be a drummer and be a woman Yes. That's what many of us do. But like I said, we're in this little bubble here, and a lot of places it's a really new thing. But I feel like it's exciting, and if you love what you do and you have a passion for it, then I'm just going to keep doing that and playing and teaching, and hopefully all the women drummers keep doing that. The young boys who are going to grow up with both boys and girls drumming, they won't have those kind of attitudes, and I feel like that's going to change things, and not just in the drumming world, but in the bigger picture, to think, oh, it's not just boys that drum and girls play flute or violin. Flute and violin are great, but we can all be drummers and all play all of it. So I feel like it's a metaphor for the world in a big way, and it really evens the playing field. So here I had this kind of pinnacle experience when I was in Israel of just this music. It was just so beautiful, and it felt like coming home to me. And I would tell this story to people, and they said, oh, were the guys like so excited to have a woman drummer? And I was like, are you kidding? Like, they could barely look at me. But if because the Bedouin guys had never played with a woman musician, and even the other two, Iraqi and Israeli, a little bit, but not so much. It's such a male-dominated culture, and male-dominated in the music department, and especially as a drummer. Drums have been traditionally male instruments. And so, it's funny, from here, and this U.S. community, drummer community, people are like, oh my God, they must have been excited. No. Like, they just couldn't even deal with it. But I recorded all the music, and when I brought it back, it was beautiful. I mean, the Bedouin guys had homemade instruments just made from materials they had on their land, and it was oud, which is like a guitar of the Middle East, and the drum, and I mean, it sounded beautiful. You could put it out as a CD. So it's this real mix of what happens as far as being a woman drummer. And even like taking my place in that was challenging, like you just kind of feel like you almost want to get small. But that's not really what drummers do. We get big and we get loud. So that was a pretty interesting experience. And the Bedouin guys were playing percussion and singing, but they weren't they weren't drummers, and they didn't have that. So in a way that was probably good, because I was it. So it was really interesting, and the whole time we traveled for a few weeks and we played music in a lot of places. I did not ever see another female percussionist or drummer, and that was telling, because we met a lot of musicians and saw a lot of people playing, but not women. One of the other things that I know, because I've studied Moroccan music, somebody I used to study with, his mom would get all the women together, and the women would play among the women, beautiful drumming and hand clapping, but the guys have their thing and the women have their thing, and it's really separate, and you don't see it or even hear it in public. So to me, that's kind of sad, because it's a way that women are invisible. And when I saw the video that he took, and I thought, wow, I want you to put that out publicly, because it's just something that we don't know, that women do drum and do sing, but they can't mix and blend. And I'd like to see some of that shift, so that women could be out and be known and be able to be seen for what they're doing. Mm-hmm. The first woman drummer that I really remember was Edwina Lee Tyler, and I can remember going to Michigan Women's Music Festival 1979, I think it was, and through the early 80s, and she was on her djembe and was just rocking the house with that. And she also had a group called Edwina Lee Tyler and a Piece of the World, and she was the main drummer, there were other drummers and dancers, and they were on fire, and it totally inspired a generation of drummers. She was the first one who I really saw play. But then over that full decade, Carolyn Brandy, Annette Aguilar, Nydia Mata, like so many drummers started going to the festival. One of the amazing things that would happen behind the night stage, if it was raining out, and they had to kind of have a break for the concert, all the drummers and percussionists would go backstage and just jam, like incredible jams. I mean, I wish we had had, iPhones back then and ways to record it, because nobody did, of course. But they were amazing. Some of the best drummers in the world just sitting around in a tent. And, at that time I was still a beginning drummer, and they would just give me a bell part, and all I could do was just focus on that bell part because the rhythms were so fast. But it was so exciting and so uplifting. And it was amazing to be part of such a community like that pretty much, well, I guess, was based both in California and New York. That was inspiring to me to want to learn. And I started studying with Carol and Brandy probably soon after that, probably in the early 1980s, doing Afro-Cuban music. And as I said, I've studied with a lot of different people and different styles. And I feel like I found my path with it. It has been my therapy. It has been my ground. It has saved me many times when I just wasn't sure, I was directionless. It's so grounding. Like, for me, I feel like drumming is a form of active meditation. That's what I teach. When I'm teaching, especially in Drumming is Prayer, you have to just sink in to your body and then let the drum kind of teach you. And what happens after a while is you realize, I'm not thinking of anything. All you are is completely present with the drum, and it's powerful. And then when you do it in a circle of people, you start realizing, oh, we're just in this pulse together. And the longer you drum with a circle of people, you realize you get quiet together, you get loud together, you bring things to an end. You kind of become this one mind. I mean, I know that can sound a little corny or funny, but it's real. There's something, the brain waves change. And I know this because I've studied a lot of music. Heart rates, brain waves, all connected to the drumming. And it's become so soothing for people and for people listening. And if you really want to ramp things up, you can drum really fast and hard. And that will also get people up, get people dancing, get people in their bodies and kind of heartbeat up. And then to be able to bring it down. Some of the times, I'll just say, with this gorgeous frame drum, I've done meditations with people where they're maybe speaking. And this is just behind. And if you listen to that for a few minutes, you kind of get soothed into it, where your whole system relaxes. And I've kind of learned over time how to really use different drums to either really bring energy up and people up, or bring it down. I've played at weddings, I've played at memorials, I've played at so many different kinds of ceremonies. And it's kind of incredible to really see the power of the drum and the way it affects people. Even if it's quiet and in the background, people are reacting to it. You'll see people moving, or you just feel things get really quiet. So I'm grateful to be part of a drum movement. I guess you could call it a movement in the Bay Area. I guess what I would say about it is that there's so many empowered women who are teaching young women and young girls, and also young boys and men. I mean, I have men in my classes. There's something that's powerful to me that men are coming to a woman to learn drumming or to learn body percussion. Whatever it is, there's something, because we have a different style of teaching. I can't say every woman by any means teaches the same, but we have a really different understanding of the world. And so we come from a really different place with that. Sadly, if you go out of the Bay Area or some other bubbles, you're not going to find women teachers, and you'll be happy if you can even find a Middle Eastern class or a West African drum class. And so I have to remember that both are true and both are real. For me, it feels so important to come together as women drummers at drum camp, or Sister Boom is also all women. And this is reminding me of, there was a pride celebration in Oakland for years called Sisters Steppin' in Pride. And there were about 200 to 300 women and girl drummers. And we'd start at Lake Merritt and we would march all the way down Grand Avenue to Snow Park. And it would usually take a couple hours. And people would like hear it and they'd come out to look. And then they would do like a double and a triple take when they realized, oh, it's all women. It's all girls. Samba drums, djembe, tambourines, everything. It's really powerful. And I think some guys feel threatened by that and they have a need to want to get in. And we're really clear, this is a women's group and this is what we're doing now. And you have a lot of opportunities with men to play or with us at different times. But it's so empowering. And I can just remember the look on people's faces. And for little girls and little boys, but little girls to see, I could do that. I could play a bell. I can play a snare drum and be empowered in that way, that it's not just boys. Because mostly what we see in movies and other things, the guys are drummers. So I'm grateful that we do have, the Bay Area, so many women who are committed to teaching and teaching around the country and what it is to be empowered with the drum and have respect for it, learn about the culture of where it's come from. And I think something I'd like to say that I've done many times, I have a good friend, my friend Manar Azriq, who's Palestinian, and we've done a lot of work together as a Palestinian and a Jew. She actually grew up Christian, but she grew up over there, and she came here because it's a safer place for her to live. But we love bringing our cultures together and teaching together. We'll teach a song in Arabic and Hebrew and bring that together. And I also have a Moroccan Sufi friend who's a drummer, and we've done some of the same, where when I'm sitting with him playing, I think this is radical right here. This is world changing, because in some places in the world, there's no way that a Sufi man is going to sit with a Jewish woman, a lesbian, and we're going to drum together. But I feel like it's these grains of sand, and it's how we make it personal. And we let the music be bigger than those kind of situations. And that has been some of the most empowering parts to me, to be able to study with people and then play with people and feel that empowering time. For me, I don't feel competitive with other women drummers. I mean, I'm committed to that and trying to say there's space enough for everyone. There are times, like I've said, where I do get frustrated that it's the same male drummers, bring me in, or some people know only these few drummers and they keep going back to them. And that can be frustrating to feel like, over here, or Middle Eastern drumming is way less known than West African. People love djembe, love seeing African dance. Most people have seen that. A lot of people have not necessarily seen these instruments or seen belly dance or North African dance. And also because of politics in the Middle East, it can be a little more challenging. And I want to educate people about the music and the place. But I feel like sometimes I get shafted. There are certain places I've tried to get gigs and so far have been unsuccessful for some of these reasons. People just don't understand and they're more familiar with Cuban music or West African music. So sometimes I feel like giving up. Sometimes I feel like I'm going to just keep, showing up and saying, hey, how about having something new and different? I drum for a women's belly dance troupe. It is so powerful to have women drummers drumming for women dancers. And it is so not traditional. Because the tradition is male drummers, women dancers, which is fine, but it's just so different. And it's exciting to have that. And so I'm interested in bringing that into the world so that people can see that. I feel like it's a lesser known culture. It's less known music. There's nowhere you can really turn on a radio or hear this music if you're not hearing it somewhere live. So that is my commitment, to keep bringing it and keep sharing it. But sometimes I feel like you really have to knock on the door a lot. I have one other main Middle East drummer I play with, and I love it because we kind of share, hey, what do you think of this rhythm? Or with this song, how do you think that should go? I love having both of us. And other people have commented when we play together, they're like, wow, you two listen to each other so much and you're so in sync. And again, I feel like that is because we're women. We're playing from a woman's perspective. So I'm going to sing and play you a song that traditionally was written by a group called Sheva. That was one of the first groups that had Arab and Israeli musicians playing together, all men. And it was mostly sung in Hebrew. My friend Manar actually translated it into Arabic, and now I've taught my whole community how to sing it in Arabic, so I'll do a little bit of both. Rakiji salam alayna, Rakiji salam alayna, Rakiji salam alayna, wa kol alam. Rakiji salam alayna, Rakiji salam alayna, Rakiji salam alayna, wa kol alam. O Javo shalom aleinu, O Javo shalom aleinu, O Javo shalom aleinu, ve'al kulam. O Javo shalom aleinu, O Javo shalom aleinu, O Javo shalom aleinu, ve'al kulam. Salam aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Salam, salam, salam aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Salam, salam. Shalom, shalom. That culture. This is my assistant, Zena. She sits in drum classes. When I put out all the chairs, if there's an empty chair or someone's not there yet, she will sit in the circle. She's been around it for her whole life. She's 17.